Wall Street veteran Bernard Madoff has been arrested and charged with running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme.
Congress wants to know what caused the Enron meltdown.
Now, while the collective rage currently is focused on WorldCom,
Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski was convicted of looting hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is one of the biggest fraud cases ever.
Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Find out more on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
Whoa, so technical difficulties this week and our video file got corrupted. Fear not. The episode is still being published, but we're back into the dark ages of audio-only podcasts. So, without further ado, here's just our voices. When you imagine the Midwest, you conjure up Rust Belt pictures of old corn silos marking the horizon that seems to stretch to infinity because it's just so damn flat. You think of humble people who truly know the value of a hard day's work, bringing pies to their new neighbors. Maybe you imagine Cookie Monster pajama pants, Skyline chili, the dulcet tones of a steel mill refinery. The Midwest has long been associated with being Canada's South, filled with nice people, opes, and, looking like it's about time to hit the road dares. Which makes our topic today such a combo breaker. Indiana-born Tim Durham was greedy. He had aspirations of being the richest person on the planet before he died. But he instead embroiled himself in the largest Ponzi scheme that Indiana had ever seen, stealing hundreds of millions and earning himself the moniker the Madoff of the Midwest. His story is dotted with expensive cars, private jets, and over-the-top birthday parties themed after the Playboy Mansion, which is why I'm calling him Hoosier Hefner. So let's get right into the centerfold of this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
Oh, I love a good Midwestern boy.
Yeah, I think he didn't like being a Midwestern boy, though.
Yeah, he seemed like he wanted to be a West Coast boy or an East Coast boy.
He pretty much moved to L.A. as soon as he could. So he wanted to get out there. Sun, fun. What is there in Indiana? Indianapolis, I've heard, is one of the most boring cities in the
there's
nation.
I've been there. There's nothing there. Nothing in Indianapolis. Not much in Indiana in general. Sorry, Indianans, if you are Indianer, a Hoosier.
Just call them Hoosiers.
You're a Hoosier. Hoosier mama.
Indianer? That sounds awful. But welcome back to another episode of White Collars, Red Hands. I'm Kashan.
And I'm Nina.
And like we already said, today we're talking about Tim Durham. Had to be one of the richest people in Indiana at the time, and now one of the saddest little boys in Indiana prison. Yeah. Tim Durham was born and raised in the small town of Seymour, Indiana.
I don't need to Seymour, Indiana. I've seen enough.
Well, just when you think you don't, suddenly Seymour, Indiana, which boasts a population of just over 21,000 residents today. And by the way, when I say small town, I really mean it, because this was the town that musician John Cougar Mellencamp grew up in, and is therefore the inspiration for his hit song, Small Town.
There you go.
Growing up in a small town, gotta fear Jesus in a small town. Yeah, so it's the small town.
It is the one.
So this is like kids riding to school on tractors territory, Seymour, Indiana, okay? Tim liked to say that he didn't come from a wealthy family, although his dad was a dentist.
All right, Tim.
Right. And when Tim was 9 years old in 1971, the median income for dentists in America was $48,000 a year, which, adjusted for inflation, is over $380,000 a year today.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you think is rich and what you think is poor.
I think it's objective, because that would put him in the top 2% of Americans today.
All right.
So no, Tim, you did come from a wealthy family. Just obviously not as wealthy as you wanted it to be.
Well, and especially to everyone, like compared to everyone who was probably around him in that small town. I mean, if it's anything like the small town that I grew up in and the one that you grew up in, like, not very many people were making over $100,000 a year. And
not
everybody,
even close.
Pretty much everybody had a blue collar job. So for your dad to be a dentist, yeah, you were fine.
Yeah, he tells this story in an interview once where he talks about his dad, like, He's like, oh yeah, he was fine with just driving the same Honda for 12 years because it had enough room to fit his golf clubs in it. And then he goes on to say that his dad, this is the story about how his dad just didn't really have the want to go out and amass more money like he does. And I was like, but the fact your dad plays golf, yeah, Tim, you're not in a normal,
you're
family.
Fine, you're fine.
If your dad is throwing his golf clubs in the back of his car,
100%.
You know, instead of like trying to get his 1970s like Ford Ranger to run so he can get to his construction job. All right,
right. You guys are fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Golfing's fucking expensive. Obviously, Tim wanted more out of life than his already well-to-do parents could offer him. So when he went to college, he chose something that he could rake in the cash with. So he picked law, and he graduated from Indiana University in 1987 and became a lawyer, passed the bar, and was actually known to already be driving a BMW to school when he was in college.
Classy.
So you know how kids from normal middle-class families can drive BMWs to school.
Well, that's what I thought happened.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Straight out of college, he started working at Ice Miller, which is a national law firm with an office in Indianapolis. And 2 years after graduation, he married Now magazine editor Joan Servas. But Tim maybe didn't marry Joan just for love, because her dad was a pretty influential person. Bert Servas was a World War II officer and a previous member of the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA. But by the time that Tim married his daughter, he was better known in the Indianapolis area as a businessman and politician. Bert had a track record of buying companies through leveraged buyouts, which is just getting a bunch of debt to buy a company. He would then revitalize the company and flip them for a profit, and he had done pretty well at this. He was also a prominent member of the Indianapolis City Council, a position that he served in from the early 1960s until he stepped down in 2002.
Wow. Even at the local level, our politicians are in there for way too long.
I think city councils, with 40 years, I don't even know if there's like re-elections.
I think you're just in the
you're
city
just like
council.
on the city council. Yeah. Tim left Ice Miller to join Bert's investment firm and to learn from his new father father-in-law, and quickly realized that the richest of the rich were those that dealt in entire company-level assets. So he became a Padawan in the art of the leveraged buyout. After about a decade, though, his marriage soured, and although I have no proof of this, he just seems like the guy that was definitely cheating on his wife
100%.
A bunch.
Yeah.
He is the epitome of scuzzy douchebag frat boy business major in college. This guy sucks. Imagine the person that went to business school that you know and now is actually has a lot of money but is a fucking prick about it. That is Tim Durham to a T. Patagonia, not then, but now, Patagonia vest and flannels for sure. Talking about how hot waitresses are, when you go out, in really gross ways.
Yeah.
Bragging about cheating on his wife when he went on a business trip to Las Vegas. Something that was actually done to me by business people I knew, and I was like, please don't do this.
Oh, I don't know if you knew this, Kashan, but if it's out of the country, it's not cheating.
I said Vegas.
I know, but I'm just letting you know. That if you leave the country and you have sex with someone else other than your spouse, it's actually not cheating.
So that's the loophole?
That's what my coworker told me.
All right, good.
When he told me he was cheating on his girlfriend.
Good to know. It's in Canada, so it doesn't count.
It doesn't matter if it's in Canada.
Sure, it's a 45-minute drive, but it is another country.
Puerto Rico might be a territory, but it's another country, and I can stick my dick wherever I want.
You're actually, only the continental United States counts, so you can do Hawaii or Alaska.
Yeah, for sure.
That's totally fine. So, whether because of that, or because Joan finally came to her senses, I don't really know, the two called it quits in 1998, and Tim left the firm, no longer a Padawan, but now a fully fledged leverage buyout Jedi Master. With his newfound skills, he started Obsidian Enterprises and started getting to work buying up a weird motley crew of companies. And at the beginning, they were largely manufacturing companies that made things from buses to cargo trailers to rubber reclamation plants. He really hit it big with his investment into Brightpoint, though, which is a wireless device distributor. I think at the time they were doing mostly cell phones, but they just described themselves as a wireless device distributor, so maybe there are other wireless devices. I don't know. He made an initial investment of about $1 million that, as the company grew into a Fortune 500 company by 2012.
Okay, so that was pretty quick to become a Fortune 500 company. That's pretty impressive.
Obsidian's not a Fortune 500 company.
Oh.
I want to specify Brightpoint was a Fortune 500 company.
Sorry.
Spoiler alert, Obsidian is no longer around in 2012.
Well.
They ended up getting bought out, but so that $1 million investment that Tim made into it with Obsidian grew to like $20 to $30 million in return, which is, that's pretty good. Tim took Obsidian Enterprises public and began really wanting to flaunt his wealth. And this big win with Brightpoint really brought in a lot of like people to invest in Obsidian. So he was kind of getting money thrown at him. And now he was a millionaire, but he would constantly talk about wanting to swap that M for a B. He really wanted to be a billionaire. He gave interviews where he publicly claimed that his goal in life was that when he died, he wanted to be the richest person on the planet. He wanted to be worth more than everyone else on the planet.
Well, it's pretty hard to beat Elon Musk at this point.
That being said, although Tim wanted to be the richest person in the world, he was not miserly with his wealth. Not really, but he would kind of flash it around as a sort of like dick measuring contest. Like he wanted people to know he was rich. That was his favorite thing to do, is to let people know just how rich he was. His office was in the penthouse at then Chase Tower, the tallest building in Indiana. And it was huge, his office, but it only housed like a few employees. He had like 6 people working there. But he had
massive.
He had the whole
space.
penthouse floor of the Chase Tower. And he got all of his employees tailored suits. He bought them all tailored suits. And he gave them all a Rolex for Christmas.
They're like, that's great. Could you pay me a living wage?
They probably got paid.
I'm just kidding.
Fine. And by the way, if you're wondering, hey, what's the cheapest commercially available Rolex that you can even get? Like, let's say he really wanted to cheap out on it, right? Well, it's one of 2 models, at least now. It's the Oyster Perpetual or the Milgauss, both of which come with a price tag of $6,400 right now.
Oh, that's it?
Commercially, so yeah.
My car was not even that expensive.
I can tell. Every time he would go out to eat also, or even went on his boat that he owned, he would hand out $100 bills to anyone who did anything for him. So like filled up his water, it's $100 to the busboy. Made him a drink, it's $100 to the bartender. Like everyone, he would just hand out $100, which, don't get me wrong, from working in the service industry, it's great for them. But he was really just trying to forward his image as a big shot. It's kind of gross. Like you could see, like, people would do this in a gross way.
Yeah, absolutely. However, I loved it when I benefited from it.
Sometimes I didn't. Like if you expected like me to be like overly thankful or something.
Oh,
I'd be like, take your
yeah.
fucking $100 back. My dignity is worth more than $100.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And I feel like he might have been kind of like that.
No, yeah, he did. I mean, he definitely seemed like somebody that like somebody who like definitely talked down to people and was like, $100 is probably a lot for you. Here you go.
Yeah, no, he definitely looked down on poor people. I bet you he did not like poor people.
No.
For sure. He also was like a really big donor to large Republican campaigns. Like he backed Rudy Giuliani's like 2008 presidential campaign. So
that tracks.
Yeah, I think he'd probably be on the side of hating poor people. Obsidian bought more and more obscure things, including a plastic surgery center, a luxury bus leasing company, a race car team, a replica vintage car manufacturer, and National Lampoon.
What?
Yeah, you know, the name that precedes movies that you watched when you were 12 because you knew they had boobies in them.
I watch them now because there's boobies in them.
Yeah, or if you are older, maybe it was the comedy news magazine that you read when you were 12 because you knew they had boobies in them. Which didn't know that National Lampoon personally started as a comedy magazine in the 1970s.
I did not know that.
You know who worked there? Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, like 6 of the people that like were originally writers for National Lampoon moved on to SNL, like the original cast of SNL.
That just, all that makes sense.
So
that's cool though.
And they were famous because they had these like comic strips in them that usually featured nudity. So, either way, by the time that Tim acquired National Lampoon, they had stopped making movies by themselves, like Animal House, which they made, and literally just started selling their name for other people to use on their movies, which is why you'd see it so much. Like National Lampoon Presents blah, blah, blah. It's because they just sold their name, and then those people would use in their movies with zero creative influence from National Lampoon.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is why such atrocities such as National Lampoon Presents Transylmania were made with the National Lampoon logo decades after their vacation movie successes. But to be fair, they had just recently had their only recent success right before Tim took it over in 2002 with National Lampoon's Van Wilder.
I remember that. I remember the name. I don't think I ever saw it.
It's the first time that we saw Ryan Reynolds in a movie. In addition to buying companies, Tim was acquiring the rich guy Infinity Stones, if you were. A 14,500 square foot Indiana mansion, somehow with more bathrooms than bedrooms. It had 8 bathrooms, but only 7 bedrooms.
People be shitting.
Make that make sense to me. Why do you have more bathrooms than bedrooms?
We got to cuddle up now. Me and the hot girl at the party.
In the bathroom?
There's not another bedroom.
Oh, okay.
But she might have to shit, so...
It also had 3 bars, 2 full kitchens. It was very large.
Yeah.
So mansion, check. He had a private jet, check. He had a 100-foot yacht called Insert Name, worth around $6.5 million that cost him literally $5,000 a month just to dock.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and supposedly he went on it like 4 times a year.
That just all makes... Yeah, that's how he seems,
That's $60,000 a year just to dock something that you visit like every now and again.
Stupid.
Not to mention you got to staff it too.
Right.
Like, there's staff on the boat. He's got to like pay bartenders and shit to just be on his personal. Yeah, it's crazy. He had a car collection of almost 70 cars.
70.
He had Rolls Royces. He had every fancy car you can have. He had in there a bunch of vintage cars. And he stored them all in a custom built garage on his property that you'd walk through, and it was multiple floors of just like lines of cars.
That's so weird.
One of his cars was a $1.8 million Bugatti.
Damn.
Which I think has to be like one of the most expensive cars that you can buy.
Yeah.
So, check. Fancy cars. He also had a model girlfriend. He was dating a knockoff Playboy bunny, penthouse pet of the month at one point, Erica Taylor.
Wow. Oh, Erica Taylor.
Do you know who that is?
No.
No, neither did I.
No.
I looked her up, and then I just got a bunch of naked pictures of her.
Was she hot?
She's all right. He also mentioned, like, a bunch that he was friends with the rapper Ludacris.
He met him once.
They had pictures together, like multiple.
Yeah. At the one party they met each other at.
It was more. He was actually friends with Ludacris.
Oh, that's funny.
And he said that, like, Luda would call him and ask him which of his cars that he was riding around in that day.
Oh my God, you know that this is what this guy talked about at every fucking party.
You know it. And Tim said that he said back to him, he's like, oh, it's raining outside today, so I'm just going to take the Bentley.
Yeah. Let me just take the Bentley.
And he was like,
I don't want to fuck
was
up
like,
the other cars.
Was like, your rainy day car's a Bentley? I'm like, oh my God, I hate this guy. Like, this guy would be so annoying to talk to. That's why I'm saying I don't want his $100.
No, I don't want his $100. No, I wouldn't so either.
Shitty. This all culminated in one of the biggest events that he had, his 45th birthday party that was Playboy Mansions themed. Like I mentioned earlier, Hoosier Hefner wore a smoking jacket all night, threw $100 bills from the second story of his mansion onto the partygoers. Paid for and flew in 20 models, including that person from Megan Wants a Millionaire. She was a reality television show star, whatever. She went out there, and he just paid them to show up and like dress in
skanky clothes,
like skimpy outfits, and walk around and just party.
My dream.
He also had ice sculptures shaped like dollar signs. And he had a birthday cake shaped like a $1 million bill, and his face was in the middle.
Jesus Christ.
And they served it like in front of his $1.8 million Bugatti. Like they cut the cake in front of the Bugatti. It's just so gross, man.
Yeah, this is like an egregious flaunt of wealth. Like, this is the worst guy ever.
That's what he was known for. It's like the exact opposite of what Midwest people are supposed to be like.
Yeah.
So, as you can tell, all of this costs a lot of money. So you would assume that Obsidian Enterprises must be doing well, right? Well, from 2001 to 2006, they reported a cumulative loss of $30 million.
Wow.
So
that's a lot.
How was he getting the money? Enter Dan Laken. So Dan Laken was appointed CEO of National Lampoon Inc. in 2002. When the company was formed and taken public, when Tim had bought it also. He originally tried to revitalize the successful past of the brand by bringing back original writers from like the magazine days when it was good for like a decade, but it didn't work, and the company was losing like $5 million a year. So Dan instead tried to pay people kickbacks to purchase the stock, to make it seem more desirable, and to inflate its price in early 2008 in attempts to avoid getting the stock delisted from the American Stock Exchange, which it was in danger of doing. He was very quickly discovered, like in the matter of months, they found him out and arrested him. And when they did arrest him, though, he's like, okay, you know what, guys? I can lead you to a bigger fish to fry in order to reduce my sentence. And that bigger fish was the man who replaced Dan Laken as CEO of National Lampoon and owner of the company, Tim Durham. Dan told authorities that Tim had been running hundreds of millions of dollars in schemes out of a small Ohio-based company, Fair Financial.
Doesn't sound very fair.
Believe it or not, it was named off the guy who founded it. His last name was Fair.
Oh.
So it has nothing to do with even
fairness.
like being fair. His name was just
fair.
Something fair. Tim Durham bought Fair Financial with partner James Cochran in 2002. And at the time, Fair Financial dealt with buying customer account receivables. What the heck is that? Fair Financial would go to businesses that are owed money over a long time, like a gym, let's say. You purchase a gym membership and you agree to a 1-year contract that you have to pay on monthly. So the gym sells a group of their memberships to Fair Financial that all in all, on the memberships, they're owed $100,000. So maybe they should sell it to Fair Financial for $80,000, and Fair Financial is the one that actually works on collecting those gym membership fees over the life of all of them. So sure, not everyone will pay the full amount over that duration, so you'll probably make a little less than $100,000, but most will, and Fair Financial gets to make a profit on the difference. And the gym also gets a lump sum of cash now and doesn't have to go through the headache of actually collecting the payments. So it's kind of boring, but it's a solid business model that promised and delivered pretty modest returns for a very long time. Fair Financial would get the money to go out and buy these account receivables by issuing investment certificates just to normal people that acted kind of like bonds. The purchaser would receive regular interest payments over a fixed duration of time, maybe 6 to 24 months is what it usually was. And at the end, they were entitled to the entire amount that they had originally invested. So kind of exactly like a bond. Before Tim and James took it over, Fair Financial was family-owned and had built decades-long reputations with investors by consistently providing a return in like 6 to 8%, which is which is good. I mean, if anyone's promising you more than that, it's probably a lie.
Yeah.
And this was mostly to elderly people in Ohio, like just small town folks that they got to invest. The kind of people that would probably go buy Google Play gift cards to like for someone from Microsoft who accidentally transferred $5,000 into their bank account instead of $50 on a refund. You know,
Yeah.
it's like they're people that maybe they don't know what they're doing all the time.
Yeah.
When it was purchased, Fair Financial had investor debt of $38 million, but owned accounts receivable in the amount of $47 million. So well balanced, you know, they had more assets than they did debt to their investors. So they're still going to make money. But by 2009, Fair Financial owed $200 million to investors, but had somehow less in accounts receivable assets at only $27 million.
Oh,
So
that's not good.
No, it's very bad. Turns out that they had stopped really doing business at all. And Tim Durham, James Cochran, and their CFO, Rick Snow, turned Fair Financial just into a piggy bank to fund their personal lives and their corporate failures. All three took loans out of the business, with Tim being the worst offender, consistently taking money out to fund personal expenses like remodeling his car collection garage, and also to funnel into the companies that he owned through Obsidian, which were failing because he was bad at his job.
I was going to say, these all sound legitimate. Like, for good things to, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. They also then doubled down and misrepresented their loans, these loans to investors, by telling them they were actually assets. We've seen them do this before where they're like, but now we have these loans where we'll get paid back and with interest. So they're assets on our balance sheet now instead of like liabilities. Because they were issuing the investment certificates, though, they were required to send around things called circulars to investors, which had to include facts about how the company was doing and about the risks you were assuming by investing. In these, they would point to the loans as assets because they were going to be paid back to the company with interest, like I said. But in reality, the men and the companies that these funds were going to were not likely to ever pay them back. They didn't have enough money.
Right.
And a lot of the companies that they were giving the loans to either went under it, so definitely weren't paying them back, or were only propped up by funds from Fair Financial and were never turning a profit because they're buying like luxury car remake manufacturer, like just stupid shit. Fair Financial's accountants actually said as much after Tim took over the company. They were like, there's no way you guys are going to be able to pay back these loans. You should write them off as a loss.
Yeah. And they didn't want to do that.
No, so they fired them. And so then they got a replacement. And the replacement said the same thing. They were like, these loans are pretty bad. You should put up collateral to cover them. But then they were like, okay, you have enough collateral for 2003 and 2004, but now you guys don't even have enough collateral to cover the loans you've taken in 2005. So then they were like, damn, facts, you're fired too.
They're like, shit, they keep saying the same thing. It's like the same bad advice over and over and over.
And then after they fired that second accounting firm, Tim also like sold all the stuff he put up for collateral for the loans, which you're not supposed to do, obviously. So then they hired a third accounting firm, but this time they hired them only to review their financials, not to perform an audit.
This is like when you're on a diet and you're like putting in your food and then you just like don't include the dessert.
Yeah, you're like, no.
Like you're like, let me track everything except the dessert.
I'll review it, but I'm not going to look.
I'm not going to like.
But don't you guys look too closely.
Don't look too close.
You know, don't give us any advice. So Fair Financial then only released unaudited financial statements that were simply signed by Durham with like a claim that says they are accurate to the best of his knowledge.
To the best of his knowledge.
Which they weren't.
Yeah.
By 2009, things had gotten pretty thin, and Fair Financial was struggling to make payments to investors, especially if someone... They were usually banking on people to reinvest the principal investment, so that they only had to pay out the small interest payments, but they were struggling to even do those for people. But But if people came back and they were like, I'd like to take $10,000 out, they were like, they did not have the ability
They're like,
to give them money.
$10,000? That's crazy.
In recordings of phone calls between James and Tim, they talk explicitly about lies to tell investors that ask why they haven't been receiving payments. They were just like, oh yeah, like just give them an excuse. Like verbatim, they're like, just give them an excuse. And then at one point, they were talking about it, and I think James told Tim, he's like, you're the best at this, like telling people lies to get them to believe them why they're going to take their money out. And then he was like, oh, in another conversation, he was like, give this guy the same explanation you gave this other person the other day, but don't use it too much because it's not necessarily true.
Jesus Christ.
You're just like, ooh, that's not good. They also discussed accounting strategies to get rid of millions of dollars in bad debt money that they would have to disclose. And they talked about how getting new investors would help them pay off the interest payments to old investors, that is the definition of a Ponzi scheme, is getting new investments to pay off old investors. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how they were running everything. They were looting the place. After Dan Lakin brought the FBI in Indiana's attention to Tim Durham, they subpoenaed Fair Financial's bank records, and they found that the story he was spinning was pretty true. Everything he said was right. They sent a fake investor to meet with James Cochran, and he gave the fake investor a bunch of lies, saying that they never dealt in loans more than a few $1,000s, and that they had never missed any interest payments in decades of operation. Both of which may have been true before they took over and ruined the company, but we're definitely far from it at this point. The FBI then raided the offices of Obsidian and Fair Financial in 2009. And with all the evidence put together, all three of Durham, Cochran, and Snow were arrested in 2011 and charged with multiple accounts of wire and securities fraud, as well as conspiracy to commit both of those as well. All three men were then convicted in late 2012. Rick Snow was sentenced to 10 years in prison. James Cochran was sentenced to 25 years in prison. And Tim Durham got the longest sentence for a white-collar criminal in the history of Indiana at 50 years, which at his age of 50 upon sentencing is almost certainly a death sentence.
Yes.
So, although it is relatively lenient, considering the total could have been up to 225 years.
Oh, wow. They did him a favor.
You know, they chilled out a little bit. They didn't fully slap him with the Burning Man off like 160 years in prison or whatever. Yeah. This large of a sentence was probably given, at least in part, due to the 1,300 victim statement letters that were sent to and read by the judge in the case, as elderly people lost their ability to live comfortably in the twilight years of their lives.
I don't know why that upsets it. It always gets me. It just gets me. It's so sad. I don't know why. I don't know why it upsets me so much. But when I hear about this stuff, I'm like, no, you really are a piece of shit. And I don't know if it's because my one grandmother isn't totally completely comfortable, and I don't know if that's why it upsets me so much, but I get so angry when these guys fuck over old people and ruin their life savings, because it's really not these old people's fault. Sure, could they have made some better investment decisions? Yes, but
they said they didn't even really know when the company got bought. It was kind of,
it was all hush hush.
They didn't send out an announcement that it was under new management, so they were surprised at the end by wait, what do you mean? Things have changed around here, and they're
and they had no idea. That's horrible.
And they were lying on the circulars they sent out and everything, so it was really, really hard to figure it out. It's sad. It's like seeing a 93-year-old woman working at a convenience store or something. And you're like, ugh. Mm-hmm. This just kind of sucks.
Well, it's like my grandma. She retired at 80. She didn't want to. Part of the reason she didn't want to retire is because she was afraid she wasn't going to have enough money. And it's damn, at 80, you didn't. It's sad. But I'm probably going to be that way. So
the price of being an artist.
The price of being an artist.
A few years afterward, Durham successfully appealed to get 2 of the 12 convictions for wire fraud overturned. and the case was remanded for resentencing to the same judge that handed out the first sentence, though, and upon reviewing the case in a new light, decided, hell nah, I got it right the first time, and resentenced him to the same amount of 50 years.
Nice.
In 2022, after serving 10 years, Tim Durham tried again to get his sentence reduced and was once again hit with a big, fat hell nah. So at this point, his only hope is that someone, I don't know, with a lot of power who happens to sympathize with greedy narcissists and has the power to commute his sentence or something will do that. But, where can you find one of those nowadays? Sounds like a long shot, right?
Yeah, I don't know if we have anybody who would do something like that.
Definitely not.
No.
So I think that we can easily say Tim Durham is an asshole of the highest caliber. His biggest goal in life was to gain more money than anyone else, and he would take any measures to get there, including ruining the lives of 5,000 people who invested in Fair Financial. There were many people whose dreams of retirement were dashed, now having to work until they die so that Tim could drive around in an almost $2 million car, which, by the way, after they seized his assets to help pay back the $200 million of restitution that he now owed, or at least the three men owed collectively, they discovered that he didn't even own almost any of the cars in his collections. They were all leased.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So by the time they sold them, they made almost no money on them because they had to pay back
the lease.
They had to pay back the lease, and then only the profit they could give back to the people, and it wasn't a lot. And now he says he's too poor to afford further appeals on his sentencing.
It sucks to suck.
What scares me the most is that if you asked his true opinion, I kind of bet you almost anything he'd say he'd do it again.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why he deserves to spend the rest of his life in a cell. Because if I went to this white ass man's knockoff Diddy party, I bet the cake tasted like shit, Tim.
Oh,
I bet that
you know a cake that big
frosting
with fondant was not delicious.
It's gross. No. Anyway, yeah, that was the story of Tim Durham, the largest FBI investigation and the largest sentence handed down for a white collar crime in Indiana. So
he deserved it. He deserved it.
And you know what we deserve, hopefully?
Money.
Money, yes, please, and support.
Kisses.
We need your support.
Hugs. Support.
You must, I compel you to leave us a 5-star review, please. You can do that on iTunes or Spotify. You can write something on iTunes if you want. Really share the message. If you're not on those, feel free to like, subscribe, share, whatever you do on the podcatcher you use. It'd be super helpful. Let's say you want to really support us. You can go to our TeePublic store. You can get to the TeePublic store. It's in the link in the show description. It's becoming some other thing now. I think it's Dashery.
Haberdashery?
Oh, wow. That might actually be why they chose the title. Because what does a haberdasher do, Nina?
They make hats.
Not just hats.
Other things,
They
too.
do make hats, though. They specialize specifically in men's accessories, men's clothing accessories. Hats, belts, wallet chains, stuff like that.
Cufflinks.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
An ascot. One of those little things that go in a pocket.
Your ass got
Eat last
fatter.
night.
What's up, bro?
It did. I gained 20 pounds.
Jesus Christ. Where the hell was I?
They call me BB. It stands for Baby Beluga.
No one calls you that. No one calls you. Anyway, you can support us by doing that. Like I said, Dashery store or TeePublic, whatever it is by the time you're reading this. You can also get to that from our website, whitecollarsredhands.com. There's a button that says check out our merch. It'll take you there. That's fine. Hey, while you're there, you can listen on the site. You can also contact us. There's a contact us page, or you can send an email to whitecollarsredhands@gmail.com. We're getting a bunch of episode suggestions recently, so thank you guys so much for who has reached out. And you can do that, too, if you haven't done it already. You can reach out and suggest an episode. We try to do a fan-submitted episode every single season, so you could be next.
Yep. And we've done 2 so far this season.
Yeah, we're getting a lot.
And I think we are going to do a 3rd one, actually.
Woo!
Because I accidentally had picked an episode we had already done.
We have 150 episodes,
It's a lot.
guys.
It's a lot.
It gets hard.
They get a little confuddled.
You can also contact us by reaching out on any of our socials. You can DM us there, facebook.com/whitecollarsredhands, Twitter at whitecollars_redhands, X at whitecollarspod, TikTok, it's whitecollarsredhands. And is it? Am I missing one?
Tell a friend.
Yeah. All right. Tell a friend. You can shout it from the rooftops. Write a manifesto and feature us prominently. Whatever you want to do to really get the word out there, I support. So with that, thank you very much for listening. And we'll see you next week on another episode of White Collars, Red Hands.